and find within.
Jason, do something!
Alex Kahuam directs The Remedy. And this movie, I would say, is reminiscent of a 1990 movie that I quite like called Mom. And the story of this one tells the story of a three-person family. We have an elderly mother who is terminally ill in bed. She's bedbound, coming towards the end of her life. And she lives with her two adult children. The son, who is the primary caregiver, is recently divorced, had to give up his work, and he's looking after his elderly mother, but he's also looking after his sister, who is got severe bipolar. So he's got a lot on his plate, and he's struggling himself with the kind of the crushing pressure of having kind of all to do with all of these kind of pressures ultimately. And the pressures get even worse when the mother seems to be exhibiting some strange behaviour. The mum subscribes to the kind of homeopathic style of self-care, where she has basically been ordering these kind of alternate medicines, shall we say, and is trying to get down that route. At the same time, the sister seems to be chanting, doing weird things, and it appears that there is some type of supernatural presence which has kind of taken hold. The place where she's got these kind of alternate medicines is run by Doug Jones's character, and he's subscribing to this theory that there are these spirits that can come into your body and heal the kind of the ails, so to speak, but that it must be nourished. And the mother appears to be under this influence at the very least, and is exhibiting cannibalistic behaviour, and almost like she's possessed, and you know, she needs nourishment, so she's eating humans. And this leads to a variety of worsening problems for our family, you might say. What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let's discuss. As I say, this movie is somewhat similar to the movie Mom from 1990, although it does have some differences. I will say that. Let's talk about what I think works in this movie's favour. I think this movie's underlying message, so we say, is the pressures of both mental illness on the actual individual afflicted with it, but also the pressures of dealing with it from a carer's perspective. And I think the movie demonstrates that quite well, without it seeming like it's lecturing or it's the primary focus of the movie. So I've got to say, I think this movie's themes, if you like, are quite pertinent, and I think as the elderly population is starting to live longer, but the health is kind of declining and things like this, you have an elderly population that is needing more care and things like that. So I think it's somewhat timely, to be honest with you. And in that, I think the movie is very much carried by some strong acting from its cast here. You really do feel the pressure put on our kind of central character, as he really struggles with the burden of looking after, you know, his elderly mother, his troubled sister, and then just his kind of day-to-day problems that are on top of that as well. So I think the mental strain that is both written on the page and in regards on the scripts, but also the performances by our actors, is very strong. The movie as well has a certain directorial style, often kind of having shots of kind of ornate sort of furniture and things that are in this kind of house that look a little bit sort of eccentric, should we call it. And it has almost like a kind of a dreamlike quality at times. The movie actually does have a kind of hallucinations and stuff within the movie where our sort of central character, the son, you know, is clearly kind of struggling to cope with what's going on around him. So I think there is some kind of things like doing like soft focus and sort of weird camera angles and things like that to try and demonstrate the kind of the mental strain, basically, and things like this. The movie, generally speaking, I think is a slower paced movie, but I think it's a deliberately paced movie. I think the kind of realization about what's kind of going on and the kind of the reveals as the film kind of goes on. You know, it's not exactly a high octane movie, but I would say it's you know, it's a pace where you're engaged with the plot, you're engaged with this kind of character or characters in the movie, and as the kind of it escalates and you know, we start to see this kind of strange behaviour from the mother and stuff, that the dawning about what's kind of going on and the escalation of the stakes as the film progresses as well, makes for you know, an engaging watch, I have to say. I thought it was a movie that kind of, you know, rises in tension as the kind of the film progresses. The VFX, it's a mixture of practical and kind of a little bit of CGI. I think the practical effects are very strong for the most part, and actually sort of quite realistic looking at times, and there's some gooey and gross kind of stuff on screen here. I mean, it's not like an extreme film branding or anything like that, but certainly I think the kind of the VFX are strong, and then just the general kind of look at the film, I think, is pretty strong. As I say, the kind of the set decoration with this kind of like over cluttered house, it's always quite dim in there and things like that, the flashing lights. I think this movie gives it this kind of stylistic edge. You know, it has an interesting story. There's a kind of a little bit of a twist in regards to what's going on in our proceedings. I kind of quite liked the way this kind of movie played out, I have to say, which leads me to what doesn't work. I quite like the way this movie ended, but I will say I would understand if people would be less than satisfied with the ending. Some people, at least. So I think the ending of this movie might be divisive. I kind of liked what they did with it, I have to say, but I will say I totally understand that some people might find this movie unsatisfying and a little disappointing. That's all I'm going to say. I'm going to clearly tell you what it is. It almost feels like there is a twist for a twist's sake to a degree. But as I say, I personally still quite enjoyed the twist, and I thought it made sense and was earned. But I do understand some people won't like it. What else can I say? I like the practical VFX here. There's a little bit of use of CGI which does look cheaper looking, I would say. The only effect that I think practically was not quite strong. There's a little bit of a dodgy wig situation kind of going on, but for the 95% of the VFX here, I think are all strong. CGI wise, there isn't loads, but when we do see our kind of CGI, there's a little bit of CGI enhancements here and there. It kind of stands out just a little bit. There are some kind of elements of the movie that are introduced that I feel were pretty unnecessary. For example, we have the uncle that turns up, so the mother's brother. So he turns up with his family, and I thought, okay, what's going to happen here? And let me tell you, not much. And I'm thinking, why even introduce these characters, because they don't really amount to anything. So it seemed sort of an unnecessary little detour to me. Maybe to kind of pad out the runtime a little bit. Maybe to have like a false sort of sense of, oh, something's going to happen, and it actually doesn't. But it just seems sort of superfluous to me, to be honest with you. It's not like a major part of the movie or anything, but it almost seems like we had this sort of little subplot introduced that kind of went nowhere, if I'm being completely honest. I do think there's a little bit of overuse of it's a dream, it's a hallucination, to the point where sometimes you're not quite sure about what's a dream and what isn't, and the kind of the use of stylistic choices borders on becoming a little bit sort of self-indulgent from our director, I would say, at the point where it's like, okay, I get it, you know, you're an artiste, I understand, but at times I think it doesn't kind of, I wouldn't say it crosses the line, but it comes close to becoming a little bit sort of self-indulgent at times. Overall though, my critiques are on the minor side. I think this is largely a very positive movie in regards to its story, its performances, its look, its aesthetics, and I think as well the themes here of mental illness on the individuals affected and those having to kind of care for them are very poignant, and it's powerful, and it's a good depiction of the crushing pressure that can kind of be caused both on people affected directly and indirectly. So I'm going to give this movie a 7 out of 10. Have you seen it? Would you see it? Please let me know your thoughts, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.
Whoa, this feels weird.
Ha! You call that a power? Yeah, I'm the law here. Nick, I'm the best!